everyone. Welcome to another edition of TCU Admission Facebook Live. We do have a surprise. I am not Dean Heath Einstein. He is unfortunately under the weather today, so I have been asked to step in on his behalf, and we're all really excited to be here with you guys today. My name is Hannah Wright. I am one of our senior admission counselors here in the Office of Admission. I'm also a very proud Horned Frog alumni, graduated in 2017 with a degree in theater and education, and I'm currently pursuing my master's in the higher education leadership program here at TCU as well, so a Horned Frog through and through. To kick us off, we always like to start each of our sessions with a land acknowledgement. So here at TCU, we respectfully acknowledge all Native American peoples who have lived on this land since time immemorial. TCU especially acknowledges and pays respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose ancestral homeland our university is located. Like I said, we are so excited to have you guys here tonight, and we love doing these Facebook Lives. We do them once a month and have a different topic every month. So when this wraps up, if you just can't get enough of TCU and all of our information, you can find previous topics on our YouTube channel. As you guys were logging in and telling us where you were tuning in from, we had people from all over. We have Christine from Colorado, Carrie from New York, Mariana from Illinois, Michael from New Orleans. We saw many friends from Indiana, California, of course, Texas, and I even think I saw a friend from South Africa. You might be the one who's tuning in from the farthest away. So thank you all so much for taking the time to be here with us. How this will work is we have an hour together to answer any questions that you might have. I will speak for a few minutes on one of our topics at hand. Our guests will speak for a few moments after we introduce ourselves, and then we're going to dive right into a Q&A. So any questions that y'all have, please throw into the chat. We will get to as many as we can. But before we do that, just a brief update of how things are looking in the Office of Admission. We are right in the middle of reviewing all of your wonderful applications if you applied this year, and we're at the tail end of that file review process for the fall 2023 entry term. We plan to release decisions here in the next couple of weeks, so be on the lookout for those. We have seen huge interest in the university this year. Football may or may not have played a part in that. We shall see. So we will be rather cautious with offers of admission this year as to not over-enroll the class, but we are so excited to see who we're able to welcome into our Horned Frog family. So tonight, our topic of discussion are some of my favorite topics, which fall under the first year experience category. We're more specifically going to speak about Frog Camp and the orientation process here at TCU. Frog Camp specifically is an extended orientation. So it is not a requirement for incoming students to participate in Frog Camp, but it's highly popular. Usually about 80-85% of our incoming class will participate in Frog Camp of some fashion before they arrive on campus. And it really acts as a social introduction to life at TCU. You will come to a few days of camp, whether that's in the state of Texas. We have some outside of the state of Texas. We're even going to Costa Rica this year, and you'll get the opportunity to meet other incoming first-year students while being mentored and guided by upperclassmen students and faculty staff members like us who work at TCU full-time. So it's a really lovely way to get to meet people before you ever step foot on campus, and we'll talk more about what that looks like tonight. But I want to also introduce my two very special guests that I have here with me tonight. We have Dr. Emily Ivy and Samantha, who is one of our students. I would love for each of y'all to introduce yourself, share what you do at TCU, and then if you want to give a brief overview of what the orientation process looks like as well, that would be great.
Great. Thanks so much, Hannah. As she mentioned, my name is Emily Ivy. I have the great opportunity of serving here at TCU as the Director of New Student and Family Programs. And what that means for you is a couple of things. I serve all of our parents and family members of our TCU students, so supporting them, providing resources, education awareness of ways that they can support their student. But I also get the great opportunity and privilege of overseeing our orientation program. So I'll highlight a few of those things, and then as you can see, Sam, one of our student leaders, is here, and I want her to be able to share a little bit of that student lens of orientation. But it is a 2-day experience. It's required for all of our incoming students. We have 11 different first-year sessions, and we have 2 different transfer sessions. So We will start those programs at the end of May, and really a majority of them are going to run through June. So you have the opportunity to choose whatever session works best for your schedule. Our students will stay overnight on campus. We invite families to join in on the orientation experience, because the more that you are involved and the more that we can help you understand what TCU is, we know the more successful your student will be. Now, there is a limit of 2 guests, so students, choose your favorite 2 family members and bring them along with you to orientation. And families, you can stay with us overnight here on campus. Many of our families do stay at local hotels. But really, orientation is meant to acclimate you to the academic and social environment of TCU. So whether that's through small groups, meeting with your academic advisor, enrolling in your courses, connecting to the new community that you're going to call home here. But really, it's about just meeting others, connecting, learning about resources and services available. So really a great experience. I want Sam to talk a little bit about it. Like I mentioned, she's one of our tremendous student leaders and gets the opportunity and has had the opportunity to be involved in orientation. And so she can kind of tell you a little bit about what is it like to be a student coming through orientation.
Hi everyone, my name is Samantha Altunian. I'm currently a sophomore here at TCU and I'm studying marketing in the Neely School of Business. This year, I have the honor to serve as the executive orientation coordinator, and I was an orientation leader myself this past summer, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had thus far at TCU. Going through orientation is such an amazing experience for incoming students. For us as orientation leaders, it kind of serves as our job to welcome you here to call the college experience and kind of be the first face that helps you through this transition. It's a really good opportunity to meet people. I met my very best friend at orientation, and a ton of my orientees met their best friends there too, which is just really cool and special. But yeah, basically we're helping you with this transition and helping you register for classes and just being a support system for you and your families. I know that this transition can be scary and super exciting, so we kind of just serve to help support you.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, you guys, for being here. I'm really excited to dive into these questions and see how you guys can use your expertise to help us answer these as well. So we are going to have a mixture of both questions that were asked earlier today on our Instagram page and also some that are being asked by you right now. So just to dive on in, we do have a question from Bella Castillo on Instagram, who asked, what date will the orientation registration be open? I would love to pass this over to Dr. Ivy.
Yeah, certainly. And that is a great question and hot off the press. So orientation registration as well as Frog Camp registration actually opens on the same day at the same time. And that is going to be the afternoon of Tuesday, March 28th. We will send you emails with information, the details of how to log in, how to register, things to think about. But again, that's going to be March 28th. We just finalized that date recently. So be on the lookout for our email communication. And again, I think it's important to know that it is a one-step process where you'll have the opportunity to register for orientation and Frog Camp on that same date. And I'll go ahead and fill in a gap because usually the follow-up question is it first come, first serve? And the answer is ultimately yes, as far as those dates. Now, orientation, we're going to serve every single student. Each session, we accommodate about 230 of our incoming students. You can sign up for an orientation date all the way through that May 1st deadline. After that, you can switch dates, but we need you to at least sign up for an initial orientation by May 1st. Now, for Frog Camp, there's certainly some limitations in capacity depending on the program. And I don't want to steal Hannah's thunder because I know she's going to talk about Frog Camp a little bit. But that Frog Camp registration opens on the 28th of March and remains open until those camps fill or about 1 week before a camp date. So I recommend to people to go ahead and be looking at those dates on our website, begin planning potentially what dates you might want to come to. We have been very strategic in trying to partner some orientation dates that end just before Frog Camp or a Frog Camp that ends just before an orientation. So students would only have to travel to campus, to Fort Worth, once. And we find that that's really helpful for our out-of-state students. So check out those dates on our website, begin coming up kind of with a plan that works best for your schedule as a student, as well as your families that might want to join you.
Perfect. A question that we often get asked as well is, how do I register for Frog Camp, orientation, all of these fun things that are coming my way as an incoming student? And all of that can be done within your MyTCU portal. Your MyTCU portal will be your best friend. Once you deposit and commit to TCU and claim your spot in our incoming class, then your portal will transition into a checklist of sorts of what to prepare and what to be on the lookout for before you arrive on campus. And that includes registering for orientation, Frog Camp, housing, all of those fun activities that are coming your way. So thank you so much for providing that insight, Dr. Ivy. I do also want to toss a question over to Sam really quickly. Sam, did you attend Frog Camp as an incoming student?
I did.
Perfect. And are you from Texas, or did you come from out of state?
So I'm originally from California, and I was really nervous about the transition going to college out of state, but Frog Camp was such a good opportunity for me to meet people and feel so much more comfortable before coming into my college experience. So I definitely recommend it for incoming students.
Wonderful. I had the same experience. I came to TCU from out of state as well. And even for students who come from in-state, Texas is a big state, right? You might not know a lot of people who are coming to TCU. So it really is just there to highlight that social acclimation and the way to meet other incoming Horned Frogs before you ever step foot on campus. So thanks for sharing your experience with us, Sam. I appreciate it. All right. Another Instagram question from Kathy Castano. She asked, how long is Frog Camp? This is a great question. All of our Frog Camp dates are already on the Frog Camp website. So like Dr. Ivy said, if you want to go ahead and start planning out your summer around those dates, you can take a look at those right now. Most of them are about 2 to 3 days. So usually they're over the weekend, but we do have some lengthier camps just due to travel, especially our Costa Rica camp, I think is going to be the longest, to make sure that we have plenty of time for our students to explore all that Costa Rica has to offer while also being able to travel to and fro. So the majority of Frog Camps will be just a few days, but there could be some that are up to 5 or 6. Great question. All right, let's see. We also have a question from Instagram. Is there a Frog Camp for transfer students? Yes, great question. So the majority of our Frog Camps that you will see on the website right now are for incoming first-year students, but we do have Frog Camp options for transfer students. If they're coming in the fall semester, they can register for any of the Frog Camps that you see on our website. If they happen to be coming in at the spring, so say spring of 2024, then we will have a Frog Camp in between both semesters called New Beginnings. That is not on our website right now, but once those dates are released, there is a spring transfer Frog Camp that takes place. I got to be a part of the spring transfer Frog Camp for this year in January, and it was a whole lot of fun. We do have different activities for those students because sometimes they're at a different place in life, or they already have experienced a little bit of an orientation process at maybe another institution. So, but we do still have a whole lot of fun, and we want to make sure that all of our students, whether first year or transfer, feel like they have that acclimation to TCU socially. So great question. Thank you so much. I have a similar question about the orientation process. So we have a very similar question from Incred April on Instagram. What happens at transfer orientation specifically? Dr. Ivy, can you take this one away?
Yeah, certainly. So our transfer orientation is going to be a one-day experience. And when we think about serving our transfer students, we know you've been to college before. We know you've been to another institution. You probably have some familiarity with how an institution operates, but we want to introduce you to what are the specific things here at TCU you need to know about? So whether that's some of our programming that we have specifically for our transfer students, we will highlight what we call our transfer student experience. And that is an office and a program that provides programming for our students, our transfer students specifically throughout the year. You'll also have the opportunity to chat with an academic advisor. I know that is always a big thing, is looking at your credits and transfer credits and what's transferring to your major, what's transferring to your degree plan. And so we're going to help you process through that and also enroll for classes. You're also going to have a small group opportunity because we find benefit in transfer students connecting with other transfer students, learning from each other, sharing experiences, and kind of building that community from that transfer mindset. We're also going to introduce you to some of the specific services that we have here at TCU, and really even some of the logistics of what is specific to TCU that you need to know about, whether that's paying the bill or signing up for a dining plan, just some of those key things that are going to be a little different than what you experience, and we want to make sure that you have that information. But again, our transfer orientation program is one day. We'll start kind of early in the morning, roughly 8 o'clock, give or take, and then we usually wrap up around 5 o'clock. So more details, we will put a draft of our schedules online. Those will not really be posted until early May, but that'll give you a sense for our transfer students as well as our first year students, what you're going to experience and what that orientation day is going to look like. So again, I realize that's 2 months down the road, May, but I do promise we'll put some information up online that's going to help you give you an idea and a sense of what you're going to experience.
Fantastic. All right, we have a lot of questions rolling in, so I'm just going to keep on going. Amelia on Instagram asked, what activities do you take part in at Frog Camp? This is such a fun question, and I feel like I could talk about it all hour. But if you head to our website, each of our Frog Camps has a different theme. So at each camp, you will have the same activities in your small group that you're participating in. But then the activities that you do camp-wide are going to be centered around the theme of camp that you choose. So some off the top of my head include All Stars, which is all about athletics and sports. It's typically in Arlington. We'll go to a Rangers game at the new stadium. You'll do a tour of the AT&T Stadium where the Cowboys play. We'll teach you a lot of our traditions and chants and cheers that we do at TCU home games. And sometimes you'll get to participate in a couple of games yourself. Not too athletic. You don't have to have a lot of skill, but you might be doing a couple relay race type activities as well. We also have a camp called Casa Nueva, which is all about learning more about your new home here in Fort Worth. So we'll take you to some Fort Worth hotspots. Maybe you will go to the Fort Worth Zoo with your group, or you'll go to Billy Bob's and learn about line dancing. Sam, did you attend Casa Nueva? Did I hear you correctly? Can you talk about some of the activities that you all did camp-wide?
Oh, yes. I went to Casa Nueva C. I remember it very vividly. The first night we went to Billy Bob's and all learned how to line dance, and it was super fun and totally just made me like so excited to be in Texas. We got to explore downtown and walk around with our groups and just go into all the different cool spots. I think we went to like an ice cream shop and a coffee shop, and we really just walked around and explored. And then we got to go to the zoo on the last day, and that was really fun. And my whole group like stuck together through the whole thing. And that was optional. We wanted to. We wanted to stick together. We also just did a lot of activities and team building and really got to know each other. And I remember on the last day, we all kind of got emotional because we just felt really connected, and we were all so excited for this experience to start.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. I love Frog Camp so much, and I think it is so beneficial for our students. So I love hearing your personal experience too. Just back to some more activities. I know the Frog Camp I attended was called Challenge A, and it definitely was about competition. We had grimy games where you do an obstacle course through shaving cream and oatmeal pits and all sorts of fun stuff. I don't know what I was thinking, but I had a great time back in 2013. And then we also have camps that might be a little bit more outdoorsy. There is one in Colorado where you can do some hiking if that is of interest to you. In years past, we've gone to Alaska, but this summer we are going to New Orleans if you would like to explore that city. And then one of my favorites every year is a frog camp called Mystery, where they give you a packing list, kind of, but you don't know where you're going until you're handed a plane ticket at the airport. So it is a mystery until the day you arrive. Maybe that's your cup of tea, maybe it isn't, but we're excited to see where our campers will go this summer. So the activities could span a variety of different topics and interests, but all of your small group kind of team building activities will be the same from camp to camp. So I hope that answered your question. That was a really wonderful one. Let's see. Jennifer Golden Hopkins asked, is there a separate frog camp for the honors college students? This is also a great question. No, there is not a separate frog camp for honors students. We only really have the separate frog camp for transfer students who come mid-year at that semester break. Otherwise, we really integrate everyone regardless of major and regardless of if you're in the honors program or not. But that's a really great way to get to meet people who maybe have different interests than you, or maybe they are in honors or not in honors or in different majors than you. So that's a long answer, but short answer, no, there is not a separate frog camp for our honors students. Good question. Let's see.
Hannah, if you don't mind, I want to go ahead and hop in because you were talking about the various camps, the in-state and the out-of-state. And I think it's important to know that for our in-state camps, for frog camp, there is no additional cost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our travel camps, that we call them travel camps, so those are out-of-state or the international camps. Those have a cost, but that is not paid upfront. So students do not pay that upfront out of pocket. That will be applied to a bill after the camp experience. So don't let that hinder you. If something that she said piqued your interest, if you are one that can just show up to an airport without knowing where you're going, don't worry about the money because you don't have to pay for that upfront. You do have the opportunity to have that applied later. So don't let that be a barrier. And again, just to repeat, those Texas camps are free.
That is such a great point. Thank you so much for pointing that out, Dr. Ivy. Let's see. Our next question is from Diane. What exactly is the difference between orientation and frog camp? That's a great question. They both sound like just very high energy, fun programs, but what really is the end goal? Dr. Ivy, would you be okay explaining the main differences between the two?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there's a lot of similarities, and I think you'll find that as the value of the transition for a first-year student, there are multiple touch points we want to give you throughout the experience from that moment of admissions throughout your entire first semester. So I think there are a lot of similarities because throughout those processes, whether it's orientation or frog camp, we want our students to build their community. We want them to find the people and the resources that are going to help support them during their 4 years as a first-year student or 2 to 4 years as a transfer student, whatever that time frame is. We want to introduce you a lot to the people. So orientation is a little bit longer and it combines social, but also some of the critical academic elements. So whether it's us introducing you to the various faculty, your academic advisor, enrolling for classes, we have 3 to 4 different small group times where you're learning from the upperclassmen and their experience and you're building that community. We have some late night programming. You're hearing about details of paying your bill and housing and campus recreation and all of the services. So we're really front loading. I would say for frog camp, you're going to get a balance also of the social as well as some of that introduction to the academic environment, but it's going to lean a little bit heavier towards that community building and social piece. So I think Hannah said it earlier, we really encourage our students to attend frog camp, even though it's considered optional. It is highly recommended. So you have to come to orientation. You don't have a choice. That's how we're going to serve you well and get you, kind of launching you into this process. But you should definitely go to frog camp. If you're not sure, or if you were like I was many years ago and super introverted and was like, I don't know if I can do this, like give it a try. You got so many people around here to support you and to connect with that I think it's super meaningful to get to frog camp as well.
Great answer. I couldn't have said it better myself. I am going to jump into a question from Blakely Canty, who asks, how do we find out who our academic advisors are upon getting in? And I also would add to this, when do you meet them? I think a lot of times students will ask, do we meet our academic advisors at orientation, or who leads those sessions? Can you talk a little bit more about that, either Dr. Ivy or Sam?
Mm-hmm.
I can take this one.
Go ahead, Sam.
So you will find out who your academic advisor is through your My TCU portal. It's listed in there. And it honestly varies from college to college whether you are meeting them at orientation or not. I'm in the Neely School of Business, and kind of how that one works is we have our orientation leaders and all of our academic advisors floating around the room, stopping to help every single student as they have questions for us. And like I would sit down with a student and help them register for their classes, or an advisor would as well. But you're going to get that like one-on-one time for Neely as soon as the semester starts. You have to schedule an appointment with your advisor once a semester for your first 2 years in the Neely School of Business. But each college goes about this process a little bit differently. I know in other colleges, you're meeting your advisor at orientation and sitting down with them, and they're making your schedule for you. So it really just depends.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I think something to add to that is that your academic advisor is typically a faculty representative of the department that houses your major. So they should be an expert on the curriculum and the classes that you'll be taking, and hopefully they'll be with you all 4 years that you're here. I had the same advisor at least all 4 years, and so that was really wonderful. They could get to know me and my end goals and help me plan from semester to semester. So they should be someone who you'll see maybe as a professor in your field of study as well. Perfect. Thanks, Sam. All right, let's see. Kristen Turnbull Hudson asks, will regular decision be out before the registration opens? Good question. What we have been advertising is that April 1st is when students will receive their decisions from us. We always aim for a little bit earlier than that. So we're hoping for mid-March release date, but we will say mid-March at the earliest, April 1st at the latest. So with that, there was a follow-up question that kind of goes along with this from Arvin that says, the later you attend orientation, does that lessen your chances of better classes? So I think this also goes hand in hand with when you find out your admission decision. Some students found out in the fall, some are still waiting to hear back. Some students might be able to register for orientation before other students, and same thing for Frog Camp and so forth. So Sam, as someone who has been an orientation leader and who has seen this throughout the summer, what would you say? Do you think that later sessions make it more difficult for students to register for classes, or do you find that it's pretty simple for students to get into the classes that they're hoping to get into?
So as every orientation session comes along, more classes, more seats in each class will be opened up. So everyone's having an equal opportunity to get in those classes. We're very strategic about that because we want everybody to have the same opportunities here. So yeah, there's nothing to be worried about. Even if you're that last orientation session, more seats and more classes will become available.
I'll add to that, Hannah, if you don't mind. Also, I apologize. Apparently, I need to move and flail a little bit more. We are conserving energy, and so my light went off in the middle of that. So we're just keeping things fresh on this Facebook Live. What constitutes a better class? Some people prefer 8 a.m. classes, and I know you're like, not college students, but you would be surprised. Some prefer 8 a.m. classes, some prefer 11 a.m. classes. We will have classes throughout the course of the summer. You just might not get the exact time that you want, but we're going to take care of our students. So I just want to dispel that myth. It is a common myth that gets shared around social media. But if you come to the 11th session, we will still have classes ready for you.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that insight, y'all. I'm going to take a brief pause to do a little ode to Dean Heath Einstein. If you have watched any of our previous Facebook Lives, he loves a good dad joke. So when I was asked to fill his shoes this evening, I knew that I could not let this Facebook Live go without doing my own dad jokes. And I decided to make them Disney themed because if you know anything about me, I love me some Disney. So I have a question for both Sam and Dr. Ivy. Bear with me. Ready? My first dad joke of the evening. Why was Cinderella so bad at soccer?
Not sure.
Because she only had one shoe? I don't know.
I think that would also be a hindrance for sure. But I would like to think it's because she always runs away from the ball. Thank you so much.
Heath would be proud of you. I sure hope he's watching right now.
I appreciated that tiny giggle I got out of Sam. For me, that is enough. So stay tuned, everyone. You might see another dad joke before the remainder of our evening. Okay, back into our questions. Let's see what we have here. Erin Carlisle asks, do you have to attend orientation before you can attend Frog Camp? This is a very great question. Dr. Ivy?
The answer is no. You can attend in whichever order that fits best for you. So we have some students that go to a frog camp and then come to orientation perhaps the next day or 2 weeks later. So just do what's best for you and do what's best for the interests of the student and what frog camp they might be interested in attending.
And on that same note, we had a similar question from Amy Bull. She is noticing that there is an orientation that is June 22nd through 23rd and a frog camp that starts on the 23rd. Do you think that there's time to do both? Are those scheduled in a way where students could end one and start another on the same day, or would you not recommend that?
Let me make sure I got the dates right. So you said there's a orientation the 22nd to the 23rd and a frog camp starts on the 23rd. That particular pair is not going to work. And that is because on the 23rd, you could be enrolling in classes up to 5 o'clock on the 23rd. And our frog camp is going to begin a little bit earlier than that. So that is a pairing we do not recommend. And that is a really great question. I know that we have a calendar resource online that is going to show you all of the frog camp dates and the orientation dates at the same time. So what we will do, of course, I don't have it pulled up right now because that would have just made too much sense. But if an orientation ends on a Tuesday, for example, again, around 5 o'clock, and we have a frog camp that starts on a Wednesday, we will house our students overnight when there is just that one overnight kind of gap. So again, trying to make it simple for our students that may be traveling. So I would say if you have a question about the pairing of dates, just send an email either to orientation@tcu.edu or frogcamp@tcu.edu, and we will help you work through pairing those dates. But definitely get a jump start on that. I like that y'all are already thinking ahead there.
Me too. So it sounds like overall, if you're able to find a camp that are at least one day apart, that might be best, especially if we can house you, just to make sure that you are experiencing everything to its fullest potential. Great question. Thank you so much. Okay, very similarly, I just want to make sure that I'm acknowledging this. Gina Edens asks if we recommend going to orientation or frog camp first. Like we said earlier, there's really no preference. It's whatever works best for your schedule. When I was an incoming student, I did the very first frog camp that they offered. I think it was in May. They had them that early when I was an incoming student. And then I did orientation a little bit later in June. You can do them in any order. They act a little bit separately from one another in terms of what goals you're accomplishing out of each of those events. So truly, whichever pairing of dates works best for your schedule, you can complete that in any order. So just wanted to make sure that we clarified that as well. Okay. Lisa Olson asks, how many students are in a group for orientation and frog camp? Dr. Ivy, did you say about 230 are going to be in each session for orientation?
Yeah, so for orientation, we have about 230 total students at each session. For our small groups, we average about 25 students, incoming students, to 2 of our upperclassmen student leaders. So that's specific for orientation. I know you got some information on frog camp, Hannah.
Yes, frog camp is very similar. We will have a few hundred students at least our larger Texas-based camps. A lot of our travel camps are going to be smaller in nature simply because the amount of students that will be traveling on behalf of TCU. But even if we do have a larger camp size, we also do small groups that are even smaller, usually about 10 to 13 students in your small group that will be led by 2 upperclassmen students and then 1 faculty or staff advisor like myself or Dr. Ivy if we are lucky enough to be in your group with you to help guide and lead as well. So very similar numbers wise unless you're going to one of our smaller travel camps. Wonderful. Anything else we need to add there? Are you feeling good about that? Perfect. We have another question. Just curious if a rising high school senior who's very interested in TCU can attend a frog camp or an orientation before they apply. The answer is unfortunately not. These programs are reserved for our students who have already received their offers of admission to TCU, and even further than that, who have already deposited and committed to TCU. So even if you have been admitted to TCU but have not yet committed, you won't be able to see those links to register for orientation, frog camp, housing, kind of any of those next steps from there. But I love the interest. There are other ways to show that you're interested in TCU. We have many visit opportunities. There are a couple summer camps that are either special program based or academic based that you can look into, but frog camp and orientation specifically are going to be for our admitted and deposited students. It's a really good question. Okay, let's see. We spoke about the cost of attending frog camp earlier, but this question from Alana asks, are there any fees for either frog camp or orientation? So while the Texas camps might be free of charge, are there fees that students might see for frog camp or even at orientation? What would you say?
There are no fees to attend orientation. You show up and we take care of you. We make sure you are well fed and you have a place to put your head. Now, I will say if our family members choose to stay on campus overnight, there is a small fee for families if they want to stay overnight, but nothing for orientation. Recapping for frog camp, if you're going to one of our Texas-based camps, no fee. And then if you're going to one of our travel camps that is considered either out of state or our international camps, there is a fee that is going to be listed on their website if you want to go ahead and check that out. But again, you do not pay that cost up front. That would be applied to your bill after the camp.
Fantastic. Sticking with Alana, she asks another wonderful question. If we could speak more about academic advisors and what relationships they have with our students. Sam, this is a great question for you. Can you touch on your academic advisor or maybe some connections that you have seen throughout the orientation process?
Yes, I can. So being an orientation leader allowed me to grow my relationship with all of the Neely academic advisors. I think I know almost every single one of them fairly well, and they are just so willing to help students. I go in their offices all the time and just talk about my life, not even anything school related sometimes, and they are always willing to listen and willing to help. Being a student is hard, and there's moments where you're like, is this the right path for me? I need some guidance. And they always will sit with you and talk it out and just help you feel like you are on the right path. And I can say that every single one of the Neely academic advisors and any advisor we have on TCU's campus is definitely willing to go above and beyond to help all of our students here.
Awesome. And Sam brings up a really great point. You can also meet with and connect with advisors who are not your assigned advisor. So if you happen to have a different advisor as a professor and want to ask them a specific question, you are more than welcome to. But then your assigned advisor will help you when registering for classes, trying to figure out what semester to study abroad, all of those fun details. So perfect. Thank you, Sam. Okay, let's see. Heather Walters asks, where do students stay during frog camp? On campus? Do parents need to book them accommodations? This is such a great question. Housing is provided for any and all of our frog camps that we offer. So if they are taking place in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they are typically in a hotel, either in Fort Worth or for our athletic camp that will be located in Arlington this year. And usually students will meet on campus to check in, and then they will load buses that will take them to said hotel. If you are happening to stay at one of our more outdoorsy camps or Challenge, for example, that is here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but is not in a hotel, those accommodations are kind of like, I say log cabins, but they're much nicer than that. Not a hotel, but it is more of a campground that is a little bit fancier of a campground that you might be accustomed to. So that's what the in-state lodging will look like. And then when you're traveling out of state or even to Costa Rica, you will also have housing accommodated for you as well. So that could look different. Colorado is going to be a little bit more outdoorsy, cabiny feel like Challenge, but then the majority of the others will also be in hotels. Now, orientation looks a little bit different. Can you speak about where students will stay during orientation, Dr. Ivy?
Yes, you will stay on campus about a building away from where we are currently sitting. And that, again, is part of that community building, is we're putting you in a hall with all other orientation students. Our orientation student leaders are there as well. So we're hosting programming in the evening in the residence halls. Last year they played volleyball, and a lot of them just hung out and chatted and learned about each other, board games, watched movies before we called lights out. And it is a great opportunity just to, again, be connecting with people. But yeah, a residence hall just around the corner. Sam, you've stayed there before, so you may be able to speak more to kind of what it feels like or the sense of it.
Oh yeah. So we stay in the residence hall has changed both the years that I've been here, and it'll probably change again for this summer. So you're getting a different experience every time. But your orientation leaders also are going to be in that residence hall with you. We also have a dance party that we do during the night, which is kind of the highlight of our nighttime activities before everybody goes to bed. But it is definitely a fun time.
I will say Frog Camp has dance parties too, and they are the talk of the town. So it seems like TCU students love a dance party is what I'm getting out of
Definitely.
This Great. We do have a few questions about the mystery Frog Camp, which is a mystery to all of us, but we do have some questions we can answer for you. Regina asked, for Mystery Frog Camp, will we be told what climate we're going to? Will we be given a packing list ahead of time? Yes, you can see that packing list already on the website. I did take a look at it to see if I could try to figure out where they're going. Even the faculty staff representatives don't know where they're going. But right now it says to bring clothing for warm weather. So that is about all I can do to provide a hint. But with that as well, there is a question about if Mystery Camp is domestic or international. It will always be domestic. So it will be right here in the US. So you won't have to worry about passports or anything like that for Mystery. But that is really all that we can disclose to you at this time. It is really fun. If you want to take a look at the Frog Camp Instagram page from this time last year, they do a big reveal video revealing where the mystery destination was. So last year it was New Orleans, and they had a really big video with a skit, and it was very cute and very fun. So they do try to make it a really fun process. So good questions. Okay, let's see. This question is from Megan. This is for Sam specifically. So she asks, what made you want to be an orientation coordinator or leader?
Yeah, so when I was a freshman here at TCU, I really wanted to stay at Texas during the summer. I was not ready to go home. I was not ready to go back and live with my parents again. I was like, I want to stay here as long as I possibly can. What can I do to be involved? And my suite mate was applying to be an orientation leader. And I was like, what's that? Like, that sounds pretty interesting. So I ended up having her put in a good word for me, and we ended up doing it together. And it was the most amazing experience. I've met so many wonderful people, and I really feel like TCU is my home. I think it's really important for all incoming students and all TCU students in general to try and be as involved as possible, because that really makes your college experience. And orientation was my outlet for that. And so far, I just love it. Regarding being an orientation coordinator specifically, I just wanted more time with orientation, and I really wanted to see things from behind the scenes and do the back end stuff, and kind of be a role model to the new orientation leaders and help them have as wonderful of an experience as I did.
Fantastic. And same thing goes for Frog Camp. We love encouraging our students to be leaders in whatever capacity they're interested in. So if you would like to help with orientation, we have student leadership positions for that. If you would like to help with Frog Camp in your upperclassmen years, we have student leadership positions for that as well. So it's a really great way, like you said, Sam, to stay on campus and close to the action over the summer if that's something that you're interested in. Something that I want to point out is that we are actually ranked number 5 for student happiness throughout our student body. And I'm just curious to hear from either of you if you think that our first year experience programs, so for example, orientation and Frog Camp, contribute to this overall sense of joy that students have coming to campus.
I mean, of course the answer is yes, right? Like, no doubt. But it's not just orientation and Frog Camp. It's TCU. It's all of the steps. It's all of the people. It's the experiences. It's from admissions to orientation to frog camp to Frogs First, which is our kind of week of welcome as we celebrate you making Fort Worth and TCU your home. It's being in the residence hall. It's that first year residential requirement where you're building those foundations and feeling a part of TCU. Like it's all of the things. It's all of the people that care. It's the people that are pouring into the students. It's the student leaders that are pouring into the students. I think all of those things are what make us the number 5 happiest campus and happiest students.
Great. Sam, anything you would add to that, or you just agree wholeheartedly?
I wholeheartedly agree. I think TCU just has a amazing atmosphere, and when you walk around, everyone has a smile on their face and everyone is willing to go the extra mile. And I really try to express that point at orientation because it's true. And it's up to the incoming students to keep passing that tradition on and being kind to everybody. And that's what makes us so special.
We might be kind of biased, but TCU is a pretty happy place to be. Wonderful. All right, moving on to some more questions. Kieran Shannon asked, how early should I sign up for frog camps and orientation? We've kind of touched on this earlier, but orientation will be available for all students. There might be certain dates that might be more attractive than others, especially if you're coming from out of state and you want to try to pair your frog camp and orientation with one another to make that just one trip to Texas. But orientation is required, like we've mentioned, for all of our students. So you will have access to register for at least one of those dates throughout the summer. With frog camp, it's a little different since it's optional. There are limits to how many students can register for each camp, and those can fill up pretty quickly. So my recommendation would be to register as early as you are able to do so. Once you have your summer schedule planned out, I would get on that as one of the first and hopefully more exciting things that you're registering for when you're getting excited for TCU. Again, there is the QR code for the calendars for both frog camp and orientation. We do have all of our summer of 2023 dates for you to take a look at. So feel free to scan that. You can also do some quick Google searches and find those calendars on our websites as well. Alrighty, we have some questions about roommates and housing and how that plays a role into each of these programs. So Natalie asks, can students choose who they room with during orientation? Sam, would you mind answering this one?
Yeah. Unfortunately, you cannot choose your roommate at orientation. You are randomly paired, but it is for the best because that's how you meet new and exciting people. That's how I met my very best friend at orientation, was because she was my roommate. So you just have to trust that it's gonna work out and you're gonna meet someone new and have a good time.
Great. We had a very similar question asked on our Instagram as well earlier today. We had a user ask, if you meet someone at Frog Camp, can they be assigned as your roommate for the school year? That's a really good question. And I think that is a little bit tricky just due to the time frame of when you might be attending Frog Camp versus when you might be registering for or selecting your residence halls during the housing process. I would say that the majority of the time, from what I have seen, your Frog Camp will probably take place after you have gone into the portal to start the linking process to register for housing and link with other students who would be your future roommates. I know in years past, they've had some Frog Camps in May. If they brought those back this year, maybe you could meet someone and really quickly decide to be roommates and go from there. But the majority of the time, by the time you meet at Frog Camp, you might not be able to be roommates. We have had situations that I have seen working Frog Camp where students are paired with roommates before they attend Frog Camp and then they meet each other at Frog Camp. That's pretty fun. So you might just happen to meet your roommate, or once you find out your assignment, if you both haven't registered for Frog Camp quite yet, you could register for the same one. So there's ways to get to meet your roommate before you arrive on campus. Wonderful. We just have time for a few more questions before we wrap up. I'm going to pass this one over to Sam again. But Reginald Oliver asks, how is the transition for out-of-state students who are coming to TCU? Can you speak about your experience here?
Yeah, I definitely can. I was someone that was really nervous for this transition. Fortunately, though, because TCU has programs like orientation and frog camp, that's really how I got to meet people. So when I got here, it was way less terrifying because I had already met so many people from going to both orientation and frog camp. Also, it's important to note when you first get here, we have Frogs First, which we talked about a little bit earlier, where you will be paired in a group of people that live in your residence hall. And so that's really how you kind of make a community within whatever residence hall you're living in. And that really helped me as well because those people became my very, very best friends. And so Frogs First was really great for that reason. And TCU in general just knows that this is a scary fear that a lot of people have. So by building community through all three of those programs and a million other that we also have, it really takes the edge off for that.
Great. Thanks, Sam. With that said, too, about 50% of our student population will come from out of state. So we do have a lot of students who come from right here in Texas. It's a large state, but then the other 50% will come from out of state or out of country. So there is a really nice balance to get to meet students from all over and to meet students who are probably traveling far from home to get to kind of share that experience as you're going through the orientation and frog camp process. So I also came to TC from out of state, like I mentioned, and I would agree with everything that Sam said. All right. Let's see. Jackson asked us, will students with similar majors be grouped together during frog camp? For frog camp specifically, this is a great question. No, not at all. It really is just based off of who registers for what camp, and then you are split up into your small groups randomly. With orientation, that's going to look a little bit different. There will be times for you to purposely be with other students who are in your intended major, but not for frog camp. Dr. Ivy, can you talk about how students might be separated into their majors at orientation?
Mm-hmm. Certainly for your small groups, it's going to be random, but there will be times when you travel with those who are in the same major to go hear from your academic advisors or to hear from your academic college, the dean or representative from your particular academic college. So we're going to kind of build community in both of those groups, right? We're going to build a little community just broadly in your small groups. And again, that's any major. And then build a little community with those in your academic college as well.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, this is a great question from Jenny. Jenny asks, is there transportation to and from the Dallas airports for orientation and frog camp? Dr. Ivy, do you know what this transportation looks like?
That is a great question. And in short, the answer is no, we will not provide transportation to campus. I do want to go ahead and add in a little pro tip here, though. As you look at scheduling flights for those that are traveling by airplane, on that second day of orientation, so it's a 2-day experience, on the second day, when you are departing, we recommend getting a flight that departs after 7 p.m. And I will say that again, after 7 p.m. on day 2 of an orientation date. That is because our enrollment times go up until 5 p.m. and those are randomly assigned to our students. Knowing the DFW traffic can be a little tricky sometimes. We don't want you to push it. So if you're traveling to Love Field, it takes a little bit longer than if you're traveling to DFW. So giving yourself about a 2-hour buffer is really helpful. So again, if you are flying, when you are departing Fort Worth, make sure that you're looking for a flight after 7 p.m. One other pro tip, don't book any flights until your orientation date is clicked, secured, and confirmed. So don't book a flight yet. Wait until you get that orientation date confirmed and then book that flight. But again, just recapping, we do not provide transportation from either airport in the DFW area for orientation or frog camp.
Those are some great pro tips. I think we need to have a big Dr. Ivy pro tip bubble that pops up on the
orientation. Oh, I'm ready. Yeah, we'll work on that for next time.
I love to hear that. Well, I think we have time for one more question. And I am seeing a question right here from Francisca, who asks if we could talk a little bit more about admitted student days and how those differ from orientation. That's a really good question. So, like we mentioned earlier, orientation is more specifically not just admitted students, but students who've been admitted and also have decided to commit to attend TCU. The goal of orientation really is to select your classes for your first semester while you're here on campus. So that's what orientation looks like. The admitted student days are really just for admitted students to come to campus and maybe get another feel of what TCU can offer them before making their final decision. Or maybe you have decided to become a Horned Frog and you want to come back for another tour with your family. Admitted student days will also include departmental visits if you want to learn a little bit more about your academic department before you decide to commit to TCU. We will have breakout sessions typically about the financial aid process, and there'll be a student panel, what religious and spiritual life looks like on campus, and many others. So I would say that the admitted student day is a little bit more all-encompassing of what you might experience as a student at TCU for solely admitted students. And then orientation is more geared specifically to those committed students and is required in order to select those classes coming into the fall semester. Did I miss anything there that either of you would add?
I think you got it.
Alrighty, well, we are right at the tail end of the hour. Before we go, I would love to leave you all on a positive note. Not that this whole experience has not been positive, but let's have some giggles with another honorary Dean Einstein dad joke. Are we ready?
Okay. Sure, yes.
Let's get excited. Okay, it's going to be Disney themed again. Surprise, surprise. My question for both of you is, why did Mickey Mouse become an astronaut?
No clue.
He could visit Pluto.
Well played.
It's a little outdated. We'll act as though Pluto is still a planet. Wonderful. Well, that is everything from us tonight. We talked about so many details surrounding Frog Camp, orientation, and our first year experience programs in general. I really want to thank Dr. Ivy and Sam for taking the time to be here with us tonight, and for all of you who joined us and asked such wonderful questions. If you think of more questions that you would like to ask us, please feel free to contact either the Office of Admission at frogmail@tcu.edu, or you can reach out to Frog Camp specifically at frogcamp@tcu.edu, or orientation specifically. I'm sensing a theme. Orientation@tcu.edu will be that email if you guys have specific questions. Thank you all again so much. We will see you next month for our next Facebook Live. And with that said, go Frogs, everyone.
Go Frogs.